This is Tracy, the Jellyfish Queen, and today I'm doing a video that I had no intentions of filming today at all. I was actually going to do a different video this week, but I was thinking a lot about the deck building. I wasn't thinking a lot. I literally thought about it for like 2 minutes, and I was like, I want to film a video about it, like, let's be honest here. But I wanted to do this video because I want to talk about the deck building process and kind of something that I was like thinking about after doing like the mock deck techs on my channel. So if you like haven't been paying attention, what I've kind of been doing is I've been doing with like modern decks just because I really miss doing deck techs because I wasn't playing modern, and all the deck techs for my EDH, like I only have like 6 EDH decks and I've already done deck techs on all of them, so I was like, I want to do more deck techs because I find them really fun and they're some of my most viewed videos and I really enjoy them. They're just really fun in my opinion to make. And you guys seem to like enjoy them as well. And so I decided I was like, I want to start doing these mock deck techs where I like basically took my knowledge about modern and made this deck that is not very traditional, because I don't want to like net deck something because that just seems lame and like why would I make a video on, not like why would I make a video on that, because like I could, and I think that would, I guess, kind of be valuable to like some people, but I like doing my own twists on things and whatnot. And then I was like really thinking about the process of deck building and how I do very unusual, strange things. And I get a lot of comments that are like, oh, why don't you try this and whatnot. And I was kind of really thinking about the whole process of deck building and how I don't really think I'm right in deck building. Like, I don't think I make decisions all the time that I'm like, hey, you know what, there's probably a card that's better, or maybe this is, I should do 3 cards instead of 4, you know, like whatever. And so I don't think I'm right, and then there's some people who act all high and mighty and think they're right, and I'm here to say they're probably not right. No, they're not probably, they're not right, because you can't be right in deck building, and you can't really be wrong because, I mean, I guess you can, but I can't be right and they can't be right, and no one can really be right because there's so many different things that you can do, and who's to say this is okay and this is not? The deck builder has all that power, and the deck builder can say, these are the decisions that I'm making. If you don't like them, tough, I'm gonna play it, I don't really care what you have to say. And so that's kind of why I feel like I like doing these mock deck techs, is because I get to be super fun and super creative, and I'm not here to say that my word is law and that I'm just here to say this is a better structure of a deck, because I've been thinking a lot about those and how, again, I haven't played with these decks, so I can't sit here and say this is gonna play out amazingly, because it may not play out amazingly. There may be some cards, but also too look at it and be like, hey, maybe this doesn't work, but this may work, because honestly, decks should always be changing. They should always be evolving. You should really never stick with a deck that's like all the time consistent. And I'm not just talking about sideboard, because I've talked about a sideboard should change, but mainboard should change too. I think that it's something that you should try cards out. I feel like people get so stuck in their ways and they're so scared to try other things in deck building, and they're scared and they're like stuck and they're like, I want to just do with what I know and I want to use this deck, and they're scared to kind of try other things. That's why I find it really fun to make these deck techs, because I get to be like totally creative. And I get to like have a lot of fun with them, but I feel like at the same time they're kind of nerve-wracking for me, because I film them and I'm scared that it's gonna be too out there and it's gonna be like too much that I'm kind of like tweaking and too much that I'm changing. But on the same token, I'm still like, who's to say that my decision is better or worse than someone else's, because it all depends on a lot of things, really. I mean, again, I think it's really hard to take 2 cards and put them side by side and say this one's better than this one. Like, I think that's a really hard thing to do with any card. I mean, in EDH, like, I think it's a little bit different, because you have, like, one card that's a 3/3 flyer for 5 mana, is outrageous, for 3 mana. 3/3 Death Touch Lifelinker for 3 mana for 2/2. And then you have a 5 mana thing that does the same thing. I mean, you could look at that and say, well, strictly the one that's less mana is more efficient and it's more cost efficient. That card is better than this card. The thing is that a lot of decisions aren't really black and white, because if you're trying to compare creatures, you know, a creature that's, you know, or a spell, or like anything really, if you're just trying to like compare those 2 things, I think it gets really tough. I think lands is a little bit more reasonable, but even then, I mean, even mana bases, like I've said this before, whenever I make mana bases, I personally prefer more basics. That's just how I operate, it's how I build my mana bases. A lot of people don't agree with that, and I'm not here to say I'm right, do this, and I'm not, like, that's not the purpose of the mock deck text. They're not to say I'm right. It's here to say, here's another look on take on this version of a deck that maybe you haven't considered before. I don't know if the deck's going to play out. I haven't played it. It's not the point of it. It's not the point to say this is the deck you should take, because I don't want anyone to take it and net deck it, because that's not the point of it. It's literally the opposite of what I want to do. I want to say, hey, maybe there are these cards that you forgot about, or maybe instead of running 2 of this card, try 3, or maybe try this as a 1 of, just to like give options to say, because you know what, sometimes I talk about cards that not a lot of people know about, but some people forget about. I mean, I do it all the time. Like, I'll forget about cards and I'm almost like, wow, dude, I like forgot like that card existed or something like that. So I don't know, I think it's really important to get a variety of opinions and look at a variety of decks if you're trying to construct your own build, and to change things up all the time, because I think it's wrong. What I think is wrong is not playing one card over the other. It's keeping your deck stagnant, because I think it should always be changing. I think you should always be trying out new things, because you may be like, oh, this is working and it's fine, but maybe there's something that's better. And I think that's where it is if something's not working, it's kind of like you're easy to say, oh, it's not working, let's figure out the problem and fix it. But if everything's fine and you're playing fine, you're like, well, everything's fine, why should I change it? But it's like, what if you make a change and it's better, it's for the better, and it's more efficient and it makes your deck better? But I think people are scared to do that. I think that's where it really comes in, is when everything is going, you know, you're in this kind of line and then your wins are consistent and whatever, you're like, why would I change anything? Because, you know, whatever. But I just think people need to experiment more. I think people need to be way more open to change and new cards and new things, and taking other people's opinions and not taking their opinions as law. I mean, like, it's, you know, I joke all the time and I say like, oh, this card's bad or whatever, you know, whatever. But like, I feel like, especially on YouTube, I never feel like I'm like, this card is terrible and you're awful if you play it. Or, I mean, and given even cards that I really like, I mean, there are cards that I really like that people don't like at all, like Ashiok Nightmare Weaver. Personally love that card, play with it a whole bunch, really like it. And then there's cards that are like no-brainer cards, like cards that you mention to people and they're like, well, duh, that card's good. And I think that leads to the other point of like understanding why your cards are good, which I did a whole video on. People don't seem to understand when they're building a deck why the cards are important in there, and synergies within the deck too. I think that's really important. Like, you'll if you net deck, you'll kind of look at cards, and maybe if you change like a couple of things, you're running a card that was in that previous net deck and you're like, well, hold up, why am I running this card? Because it doesn't make sense in my version of the deck. I talked about that in like my elf, I don't know if I mentioned it in that video, but yeah, I think I did. I was like running this, when I built elves, I was running this land, and I think, was it Pendelhaven? I don't know if it was Pendelhaven. It was the Okina Temple of the Grandfathers. It's a land, it's not a very great land, but it's like your legendary creature gets like +2/+2 or something like that. Whatever the card is, I don't know, whatever. And I was running it because most builds run 3 Azuri, but I wasn't, and you know, that's the whole thing. That was like another huge thing that I got like a lot of flack for, because everyone was like, why aren't you running more Azuri? And I was like, eh. And I feel like too, I'm not amazing at that. Like, or I should rephrase, when I played competitively, I wasn't really good about that. I think I was so like anti doing what everyone else was doing, and I still am. Sometimes the quote best choice, I don't even really look at that much. When people are like, oh, this card's really good, this card's really good, there's some cards that stick to me that I'm like, yeah, absolutely, I really agree with you. And there's other cards that I kind of throw back and say, I don't want to run these cards, they're too mainstream, like, because I'm a hipster and I don't want to go with what everyone else is doing. I'm trying to like make things a little bit different, shake things up. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I don't really know where I was going with that. But, yeah, I just think with the whole process of, like, deck building, perfecting deck building, I just think it takes a long period of time. Like anything. I think it takes a thing, and I don't think there ever should be, like, one version of a deck list that looks a certain way, that it's assumed that you're running these cards. Because, let me tell you guys something, really throwing off your opponent is, like, one of the best things you can do. Running cards that are going to throw them off, are going to tip them off their game that they're not expecting. Running different cards in your sideboard because they don't know what you're going to bring in for your sideboard. If you run typical things, people know how you're going to play, and they're going to play cards in their sideboard to beat your sideboard. And it's not good, and that's not effective. So really testing the waters, experimentation, things to talk about all the time, things that I think are really important, that I think more people need to engage in those practices, because if not, things just get stale and things get boring, and then you see like when Callblade was a thing and every single person played that deck, and it was like, if you weren't, you were like basically dead, why are you even playing? That's like really unhealthy, and you know, that is a huge reason about why bannings happen, because a lot of people play the same deck and they're like, Wizards is like, no, stop, we need change and we need variety, and I just think people are scared of that. I think people are really scared to play decks that aren't the top tier decks. I hate that phrase. I just want to like throw that out there. I absolutely hate when people say top tier and like low tier or whatever. Those are garbage terms. We need to like take those and like actually toss them in the trash, because they're very undermining, I think, and they're very like rude. And I think it's, again, I think it's like this committee of people who turn around and say, this card's good, this card's bad. Who are you to say those cards are good and whose cards are bad? You know what I mean? Like, I've had people tell me all the time cards are good and cards are bad and whatever. And I mean, I hate unpopular cards. I'm gonna do a video soon talking about underrated cards and, overrated cards in Modern. And that's gonna be I'm gonna hate on so many things. It's gonna be great. Unpopular opinions, I'm so ready for it. That's all I do, is I just, unpopular opinions. But yeah, I think too, like, a lot of people get like scared to have those unpopular opinions, because then they get so much flack for it, and I get flack all the time for like everything, but whatever. And I think people like are like that Tarmogoyf train, because it's the Tarmogoyf train, okay? Where like everyone is like, you're just getting into Modern, and you're just like, oh my god, this card, everyone talks about this card, it's like $100, it must be really, really good, and then you like hop on the Tarmogoyf Express, and then you're like, woohoo, Tarmogoyf Express is great, and then all those people who don't think Tarmogoyf is good are like sitting out and they're trying to like race the train, but the train's like going fast, and it's like, I'm on the Tarmogoyf Express, I'm great, but then there's like a secret passageway that you walk through, and then you end up beating the train because Tarmogoyf is not a great card. I totally made that up on the spot. It's pretty lit, if you ask me. So, yeah, I just don't really like Tarmogoyf. But I understand why people do, and I understand why it's $100. Well, I don't understand why it's $100. Shouldn't be $100, but I understand why people like it. I understand the argument for it. I have seen Tarmogoyf be really good, and it's not like that. Like, and that's what I think is interesting, is that when people say, oh, cards are bad, I was like, but then they work in certain instances, but cards that are really good cannot work in certain instances. I see this all the time. When I did the whole video about counterspells in Modern, I talked about how some restrictive, a lot of them, mainly, literally all of them are, about how, you know, everyone says, oh, this counterspell is great, like Cryptic Command. I have like the biggest thing with Cryptic Command, because I don't like it. I just don't like that card. I just think there are better things. Like Ancestral Vision is another one. That when that came out, I was like, I don't really like this card, and everyone was like, oh, the Dark Elves, oh, this card great, like whatever. And you know, it's just, you know, the next big thing. I think everything, you know, cards come out, or cards get unbanned, or, you know, cards get revisited, and people are like, oh man, like this is really sweet, check out this sweet combo, or like anything like that. But you know, I think a lot of people go with the trend, and I think a lot of people go with the majority, and I don't think that's good. I don't. I think that more people need to step outside of the majority and say, everyone's doing X. Maybe X isn't the right choice to do. And I put that in quotes because there's no right deck, there's no best deck, and it's just, you can't say those things. Like, you can't say that there's a best deck, because there's not, because again, it's my cat chasing mouse example, where like, you have 3 decks, and this deck beats this deck, and then this deck beats this deck, but this deck beats this deck, and it's like a circle, and like everything loops, and there's like all these other decks in there, because, you know, not every one deck can beat all decks at every given time. It's just not possible. It's just not. So, yeah. That was it, talking about some deck building sort of things. I feel like this got into other things other than deck building, but that's fine, so. It's a real talk. I haven't done one of these in a really long time, so. Yeah, I'll show you guys later. Bye.